So this evening, we'll start with the chest opener, which requires one brick and one block. They might actually be able to get away with taking the block out from behind the head, but it's just there to, if the back of the neck feels a little bit strong. And this block goes across your back that way, and you want it to be at the bottom of the rib cage, just touching. And then the rest of the block is obviously going to be a bit lower than that. So there's a little bit of fidgeting just to get ourselves in the same right place. So we start with the knees high and wide, and we're going to bring the elbows to the ground and kind of wiggle your spine in towards the block, and then allow yourself to come into place. So immediately you can feel that the chest is really very much thrust up into the air. You get an enormous feeling of opening in the ribs. And as I said, if you wanted to, you could take the block out from behind the head, but it will make the curvature in your spine more pronounced. Now, some of us have got very little space between the discs, and where the vertebrae come down, there's little snaky crocodile lines down the back. For some of us, those are very close, and trying to get the head to the floor without anything underneath to support it would be really tricky and might even actually cause you a bit of pain. So for me, I know in my back and my neck, the block is a necessary aid. Once you're in place, you can let the hands come by the side of your body. I'm going to keep my knees high, feet wide, and just let the knees rock into the center. If your body's different to mine and you find that you can relax your shoulders down very easily, it doesn't feel like it's impeding your spine or your neck or your breath, you could lengthen your legs out along the mat and then just let them roll open, very much like we would do Shavasana. We'll be here for a couple of minutes. Enjoy some easy breathing into the ribs. So you want to be comfortable enough that you can still breathe a full breath and let the ribs and your diaphragm open and close. If your legs are lengthened out, you just start to draw your feet closer in towards your body. Take a little breath. Let the legs roll over towards the right side and see if we can slowly roll off of that brick. You just take one hand behind and move it out of the way to the side, spine back to the floor. Yeah, we'll spend a couple of minutes here. This time you might be more able to lengthen your legs out into that normal shavasana. I'm just going to take the right hand below the belly button and the left hand above. Breath through the fingertips. And allow the spine a chance to find its own neutral position again. So just lengthening out, letting that lower arch curve of the spine to move away slightly. So it's quite important to let the nervous system settle after force into the upper part of the back. Begin to slide the heels along the floor in towards my body. Give myself the gentlest of hugs. And reach in towards your chest. Draw yourself into a little ball. And then I'm going to roll onto my right side. Just use the hands to press into the floor and swing the feet towards the back of the mat. Allow myself to take a long breath there. Take a couple of rounds of cat-cow. Into neutral spine. Just going to pivot the feet out to the side again. Allow myself to take the legs out in front. I'm going to draw the left leg in towards me. Just take the hand underneath the shin for a moment. Now this leg is still active. I'm pressing out through the heel, sitting up as tall as I can. And rather than rocking the pelvis around, I'm actually just moving the knee out to the side. So I'm opening the groins a little bit. And then bring that heel over so it's out to the ankle, the opposite side of the thigh. Take hands back, keep that foot flexed, and bring the right heel in towards me a little bit. And draw the chest forwards and up. And just remind myself to hold this figure four position in the legs. So I'm starting to press that left knee towards the front of the mat and away from me. Now, release that out. Straighten both legs out as I sit tall. Again, just take the leg, this time the right side, and let that rock out to the side a little bit. Again, this leg is, lower leg is still active, pressing the leg away and sliding into the ground. Bringing that leg across, hands come behind, that leg comes in. Keep the right foot flexed. Send the right knee towards the front of the mat. Roll the shoulders back and lift the chest a little bit. So pressing down through these arms and shoulders and taking the weight out of my buttocks a little bit. Releasing the legs out again. Sitting up nice and tall. Just give the legs a little bit of a shake. I'm going to swing the feet around again. Just move the block out. And come down onto my side. So I'm going to start on my left side and lengthen my body down the center line of the mat. I'm going to start with my palm facing down on the floor until I can bring my ear down onto my arm. I'm going to try and sit on the hip bone rather than sitting on the end of the buttock, letting the body roll backwards. I want to keep upright. I'm going to slowly turn the palm up towards the sky, lengthen out through the legs a little bit, squeeze the thighs together and point the toes away. And very carefully take the right hand onto the hip and lift it up towards the sky, and take the hand over and see if I can place one hand on top of the other. And make this even more fun. I'm going to see if I can lift the thighs gently away from the floor. Just a little bit, only a fraction. Test the balance a little bit. Some evenings rather a lot. And just breathing into your ribs, you get a nice opening again. So just opening those intercostal muscles around the cage, lots of different directions. The legs come down again. Now I'm just going to lift up and move myself the opposite end of the mat so that I can still see the clock. You could just allow yourself to roll onto your chest and wiggle across and not change ends. That would be no problem at all. So just so you can see it from a different view. Nice long body. And the ear to come down and then turn the palm up. Draw the belly muscles in a little bit. Squeeze the legs together and toes away and allow yourself to lift just that fraction of the floor. And then see if you can take your left hand onto your hip. And inhale that up. And over we go. And hopefully not onto our backs. So just letting ourselves stay lifted. There's a fair amount of wiggliness going on. And keep the breath smooth. Legs come down. All the knees in towards the body. Let ourselves lift. I'm going to draw the block with me as well. Have that portrait style going across the mat. And just bring the knees together and come into hero's pose. So I'm going to sit down onto the sitting bones. The heels are either side. To take it a little gently on those knees. The calf muscles take a little time to release. So I'm just going to sit up nice and tall. And once your knees feel like they're safe, you can take your arms out nice and wide. And we'll just take a surface stretch. I'm going to bring the right arm across and lock with the left. Roll the shoulder around. Now I'm going to breathe into the back of the shoulder blades. Let the shoulder drop as much as you can. And we'll feel the muscles underneath the shoulder blades stretching out a little bit. The arms out. Flow them across the opposite way. A great pose if you've been stuck in an office working on a laptop all afternoon or all day. It's a believe it or not, even though you're shrugging the shoulders round, you're sort of taking them past their position they've been in all day. So it's still a good healthy stretch for them. And release the arms again. We'll lift up that little bit and just move the block out towards the front of the mat. Bring the shins more into parallel. You tuck your toes underneath. Go for two. You're going to sit up on top of the heels so we get a little bit of a toe stretch going on. Not everybody's favorite, but it is necessary to stretch those tendons and ligaments out in the feet, just as we would do, stretching our fingers if we were pulsing them in and out like that. Same thing. And we'll let myself come onto all fours, and knees wide. So back onto the heels and the bootlaces are down. It's going to be very much like child's pose as I slowly stretch the hands out. And we'll walk the hands over towards the left side to start with, come into a side bend. And then the ribs and the thighs rest against each other. 5 really long deep breaths here to breathe into the side of the body. And hands are far enough away that the elbows are off the floor. And just slowly walk the hands around to the opposite side. Take 5 breaths here. Back into the center. And we're going to lift just a little bit so I can take the right hand out 90 degrees to the side and lay the shoulder in here to the floor. And start to walk the left hand over towards the right side of the mat. So I'm trying to open up the chest alongside of the mat. And try to avoid bending the elbow of this top arm. And try and twist the body underneath. Slowly bring the hand back. Ravel. Take the opposite hand through. Really into the floor. Allow myself to walk the hand over. Just open the chest a little more along the side. So it's going to feel quite big in the shoulders as a stretch. Also feeling in the spine. You'll feel some of your abdominal muscles getting a little bit of a stretch down the obliques. Okay, we'll walk the hand back. Let ourselves lift. Take another cough. Apologize for that this evening. Bring ourselves back up onto all fours. Now tuck the toes underneath. Allow ourselves to just lift the knees off the ground, just about 1/2 inch or so. And so you're going to press into the hands, make sure they're underneath your shoulders, and push away from the ground a little. Push into the toes a little bit, keeping the knees just off the ground. And then breathe. Keep belly drawn in a fraction. Then we're going to send the hips up and back to down dog. And immediately walk the hands in towards the toes for a forward bend. As we arrive, we'll slide the fingers up the shins and come up halfway. and the legs to open out, keeping the weight in the toes a little, and then folding down and over and towards the ground. Bring hands onto the shins again, lifting up. And ease our way down again. Halfway. So Ardha Uttanasana is the pose when we move halfway through. Uttanasana all the way down. Come on, one more time. Ease our way down. Take the hands forwards a little bit. Allow ourselves to soften the knees. So we can just sit down into a chair. So we can get those bums quite low. Ribs and thighs touch. And we'll let the hands come away from the floor and then lengthen out. So more or less in line with the body. And take a little breath. Draw the belly in. Drive through the legs slowly. Let yourself lift all the way up. And take it into a small back bend. And bring hands towards your heart. Now you softly wiggle your toes together onto the center line. Keep a little bit of a space between the ankle bones. And then soften the knees over your toes. Sit down a little deeper, just a fraction. Allow yourself to take the hands out in front. Then we're going to take the right hand towards the back of the mat. Turn the chest open, look towards the rear hand. Inhale that up and over, and then fold down gently. Let the ribs and the thighs touch. Drag the hands along the floor. Bring the hands up towards the sky behind us, and then float forward. So normally when we do the Rishti sequence, just driving out gently out of the legs, we take that into a small back bend. We normally do this with feet apart. This evening, we're doing it with the feet together. Softening the knees. Taking the hands out in front. Left arm goes. And try and keep the hips and the knees pointing forwards, and square with each other. The hand comes up and over, down to the floor. Ribs and thighs touch. Hands drag along the ground, float behind us. Coming forwards, out in front, drive through the legs again. Then bring the hands in towards the heart. Hinge over the hips. It just works on the balance a little bit more. It's a little stronger in the hamstrings as well. And then from the forward bend, all those hands gently back in towards the front of the mat. And bring ourselves into our down dog position. And we can come forwards into plank. Take a little breath. The knees come to the ground. Allow ourselves to bring the elbows to the floor underneath the shoulders, palms down. Letting the legs away. So we're moving into an elbow plank. And press out through the heels for a moment. And broaden the shoulders out wide. More slowly, let the knees come to the floor. And tuck the toes, press the shins into the ground, press the hips gently to the floor as we draw the belly in and we move into the Sphinx pose. Now I'm trying to draw the chest forwards and shoulders out wide. Now we're going to come down to the ground, hands back towards the bottom of the ribs, shoulders roll back and press into the floor. We're bringing ourselves back into down dog and make sure the fingers are right near the front end of the mat. Let the toes underneath. So we're going to take a little bit of a side squat in our down dog and then move into a side plank as a flow. It sounds a bit dramatic, but it's fairly easy. So you allow yourself to soften your knees. Take a little breath. Roll the feet over towards the left side. As you continue to take your bottom towards your heels, allow your right hand to come to the floor, stretch out towards the back of the mat, and then press through the legs. Take that top arm all the way towards the front of the mat, into the side bend. Scoot the hand back into a plank and lift into down dog. And soften the knees again. Start to roll the feet the opposite way. Squat back. Take the left hand towards the back of the mat. Press through the legs up into our side plank. Stretch the hand forwards. Ease the hand up towards the sky. Roll it down into the floor. And from the plank, move back into our down dog. So we'll just do that a little quicker. Soften the knees, bend. Squat back, set your hand towards the back of the mat. And then accelerate towards the front of the mat. Arm comes high through the plank. Lift into down dog, stretch it back. Soften the knees, squat back. Left hand releases. Up and over we go. Hand comes high, down to the floor, into the plank. Lift into our down dog. Take it to the left, squat. Inhale high and up and over. Hand goes to the sky, roll it back into plank, and lift the hips high. It's our last side. Inhale up and over. Hand comes high, roll it into plank. And we take it back into down dog. Take a little breath through here. Walk the hands into that forward bend. Back of the mat. One long breath. Nice exhale, ease in. Hands onto the hips, soften the knees a little bit, and let ourselves lift up. We'll shake everything out as we walk into the front of the mat. Have the feet about hip distance apart. Bring hands in towards the heart as you breathe in. Soften the knees a little as you come forwards into your bend. Take a little breath. Hands on the floor. Your right foot to the back of the mat. And we'll take a little breath from here. Stretch out through that back leg. So there's a definite feeling of the groins opening out. And the front knee is over that ankle. And the front shin is vertical to the ground. And then we'll let the back knee down to the floor. We're going to place the right hand to the ground. Inhale into a twist. The left hand rises. And the hand comes back down to the floor. We let ourselves take it to the opposite side. Bring the hands down again. Take a little breath. Lift the back knee. Step back into down dog. We'll draw the right knee in towards the chest. Bring that foot through. Up into the fingertips. Again, press out through that back leg. Nice and straight. Lower the back knee down to the floor. Left hand to the ground. Take a twist, the right hand lifts up. Knee squeezes in just to the center line a little bit. Bring the hand to the floor. Take it to the second side. You will notice that this, what's called the open side, is a little trickier than the other. Take a little breath from there. Lift the back knee up onto the fingertips and step into the forward bend. Bring hands onto the hips. Let ourselves lift. Bring hands in towards the heart as you take the breath in. On the exhale, draw the belly in, soften the knees, and fold yourself down to the floor. And take a breath here and step the right foot to the back of the mat into lunge. And keep the back knee lifted this time. And bring the hands alongside the body. And we'll float the arms forwards as we lift the body just a little off of that thigh. into a power lunge. And drive your tailbone down, lift your body, try and find your balance. And bring your hands in towards the heart. Elbows are out wide. You're going to rotate gently towards the left. Lean forward to take the elbow to the outside of that thigh. And then press the hands together and lift the chest from the floor. So we're just taking a revolved twist in the high crescent pose. Bring the hands to the floor and we'll scissor that left leg in down dog. And then draw the knee back in towards the chest and through that. Take a little breath and step it into that forward bend. Hands onto the hips, off the knees, and we'll lift. Hands into the heart again. And so as to fold down. It's time as we take the breath in. On the exhale, the left leg goes back. Go foot around and get a nice long lunge on the fingertips. We slowly take the fingertips away from the floor, alongside the body. Lift the hands forwards and then the body up a fraction, so we're off of the thigh. Send the tailbone down. Lift yourself into that high crescent pose. Hands in towards the heart, the elbows are wide. We rotate round, fold across. Lift a little from the floor. Focus again, pressing out on that back leg. Bring hands to the ground and scissor the right leg high into a three-legged down dog. And draw the knee in towards the body and through into the lunge. And step it into the front of the mat. A big exhale to sink onto the ribs. Hands onto the hips and lift up. Hands high and wide this time. Hands in towards the heart. And exhale down to the floor. And step the right and the left leg back to our down dog. I'm going to scissor the right leg to the sky. Then come into a three-legged plank, which falls on the tippy toes for a three-legged half plank. The back leg comes down as we turn the other boot laces to the floor. From up dog, we move back into down dog. We'll scissor the left leg, come forward into the plank, three-legged half, lower the leg. Allow us to come into the up dog as we turn the other foot over, roll it back to down dog. We're going to do 3 to each side. Right leg lifts, comes forwards, half plank, down, inhale high, roll it back, left leg lifts, Come forwards, plank and down, inhale up, and roll it back. Side to the right, high, come forwards, push through and down, inhale up, roll it back, sizzle left leg, forwards, through, down, inhale it up, back into our down dog. Come forwards into plank. Let the knees come down to the ground, directly underneath the hips. We're going to take a little breath. Allow ourselves to tuck the toes of the right foot underneath and lengthen the leg out. And start to press down through the left shin, foot away from the ground. Try and keep the hip bones the same distance from the floor. Toes are pointing towards the ground. The leg is flexed, letting out. We'll take the left hand away, now in front. We'll bend that right knee so the sole of the foot's towards the sky. Keeping your fingers and your eyes connected on that front hand. You swing yourself around into the twist. Find your foot. And begin to press the shin away as you open your chest on the side of the mat. As you can tell, I'm still breathing very heavily from those planks. Don't catch the breath in the twist. Two more. This one. Inhale, let everything out. Bring it back to the ground. One more side to play with. So the left toe is tucked under, leg lengthens back. Press down through the shin to lift the leg and stabilizes through the core. Take the right hand forward, bend the left knee. Look towards the fingertips. You open up towards the back of the mat, find a foot. Keep the chest open to the long side. Pressing down through the shin, top shin away. It helps open up the shoulder. Release everything out. And we sit back onto the floor. We're going to take the block behind us. Allow ourselves to lengthen the legs out in front. So hopefully your breath has caught back up with you a little bit. We're going to take the left foot underneath, now towards that right hip, so the knee points forwards. Take the right foot across, bringing in close so the foot is flat to the floor, tilt the pelvis towards the front of the mat, keep that front knee high. We'll take the left hand up and over, brace the elbow and the leg together, and just take that right hand gently behind the hip, over the wrist shoulder. Release the legs out again. Cross it over to the opposite side. release. Legs out in front. And we're going to bring the right heel in towards the groin. Just allow yourself to lift up, move the block out. Try and have this shin down onto the floor. So you can either use the brick or the block under the back of the thigh. You're going to square the hips up and then roll this leg in. So the long leg rolls in, the toes point towards the sky, and put a little bend into the back of the knee. I'm going to try and press the sole of this foot into the groin, into the thigh. Press the shin down into the floor a little bit. Bring hands onto the shin. Pull yourself a little bit into the front edge of your sitting bones. And on the exhale, we'll let ourselves fold forwards. Hands out. Now, because we're being very strict with squaring the hips and pressing this knee down and pushing the foot into the thigh, you might find that you don't forward bend as deeply as you do sometimes in the pose when we warm up and we come into it in a slightly different way. I'm still trying to lengthen this long leg out in front and draw the same left hip back a little bit. So we're squaring the body up to the center line. Remember, we're just pressing this shin very lightly down into the ground. Flex foot. Take a little breath from there and release. And we'll take the opposite leg out. And just reverse that up. So again, you might find you need to use a prop, so they don't have to be used evenly on both sides. You just work with where your body is. So we square up, we put a little bend in the knee, we bring the hands onto the shins, we get a little wriggle into the front edge of the sitting bones. Draw the belly in and fold over. Take the hands out towards the toes, come with a nice feeling. Start to lengthen the leg away and draw the head back. So we're looking at working on getting this leg optimizing it in terms of straightness, but without pressing the knee joint down to the floor. With build up this calf, front leg can be onto the ground. Remember the opposite shin and foot are still active, and they're pressing down a little bit, drawing the belly in. Last couple of seconds. And then we can release. I'm going to swing the feet towards the back of the mat, back down onto the belly again. I want to make sure your chin is on the mat, on hanging over the edge, because we're going to be here for a little while. And I'm going to take the feet deliberately, what I think is hip distance apart. Obviously, I can't see them, so it's much more of a feeling sensation. Also, I'm here wriggling the hips out a little bit. And then I'm going to slowly bend the right knee, bring the heel in towards the buttock, take the right hand back, find the toes, place the palm onto the bootlace side of the foot, and then ease the heel in towards the sitting bone, low down as I can get. Now I'm going to try and press the thigh of this back leg into the floor and the knee away. Release that leg gently to the floor. And bend the opposite leg. The hand back, find the toes. Again, the elbow to be pointing skyward. And try and keep the chest flat to the ground, square. And we'll start to bring the heel in towards the bottom. Once that gets as close as it can, I'm going to press that thigh into the ground and the knee away. And then I'm going to release that leg. Bring both hands underneath my chin and just wriggle out the hips a little bit. Let the legs soften off. I'm going to come into my bow pose. So I'm going to bend both knees. Again, the knees want to be hip distance apart, not wider or closer. And bring the heels in towards the bottom. And take the hands gently back. This time I'm going to find the ankle joints of each leg. So I tend to go back one leg at a time. Try and get the knees that hip distance apart. Now once I'm in position and chest is on the floor and the shoulders are relaxed towards the back of the mat at a touch, I'm going to flex the ankles, place the thighs and the hips into the floor again, and start to push the shins towards the back of the mat. But I'm going to try and keep the thighs on the ground. Now as I start to get some space in the spine, and those thighs press down and the shins press back, the body will lift a little from the floor. And then I'm going to take another breath and see if I can consciously start to press the soles of the feet to the sky at the same time. Come into the fullest version of my bow pose. Trying to keep the knees hip distance apart, or at least maybe shoulder distance apart. Again, you can't see. I encourage you not to look, otherwise you could possibly cause yourself a mischief. So feeling the sensation, thighs away from the ground. Pushing the feet towards the sky. Last breath. And then release everything back down to the floor. Allow yourself to bring the hands back underneath your chin and wiggle out the hips a little from side to side as you gently allow your legs to come back into that center line. So toes and thighs are touching. So one of our old favorites, the scorpion twist. We'll take the hands out wide, in line with the chest. Just come up onto the fingertips. Going to bend the left knee. Take the left thigh away from the floor, point the toes towards the sky, and start to roll onto the right side. Let the ear come to the ground, and see how close we can get that foot on the floor to the hand over on the right side. And we'll lift the knee high, roll up onto the side of the body, hold ourselves down, and then take ourselves to the opposite side. So the first couple of rounds tend to be sort of exploratory. Your coordination, and then the back starts to open up a little bit more as you come back over, roll onto your belly. Find with a bit of luck you can get a little deeper. You'll also notice that you tend to somehow magically inch down the mat towards the back of the mat. We'll lift the knee high, roll the thigh over it, the chest down to the floor. Come back onto the center line with the legs each time. Get yourself to the lift. And roll it over. And lift high again. And then gently back. Time for one more to each side. Left leg, lift. Roll it over. And we breathe. Lift it high. Roll over onto the belly. Foot comes down. Last side to lift. Lift the right leg as high as you can. Then roll it over. Come back high. Roll over. Now, as you do, bring your hands towards the bottom of the ribs. Peel away from the floor. Bring the knees out nice and wide. Take a little breath down onto the heels. We're going to come into child's pose, and we're just going to let the hands come underneath the head. The elbows are wide. I'm just going to put a little kind of soft break into the spine and give it a little rest. And the shoulders as well. Just catching the breath, the fraction. And taking a little bit more oxygen into the body. We'll come back up. Now I'm going to use the flat block again. I'm just going to take it out to my side and I'm going to turn side on because I know what's coming next. I'm going to take the toes behind, just allow myself to lift into Malasana with the feet on the block. Take the toes out wide, just have a little wiggle around into a comfy position. Make yourself to bring your hands together. Press those elbows or the back of the arms into the thighs a little bit so they can open out a little more. As you bring your hands in towards your heart, so you're looking to get more or less a right angle between the wrists and the hands. Draw the shoulders back a little bit as you sit back. Take a breath from here. Allow the hands to go towards the front of the mat. Lift the bottom high and then wiggle the feet out into a wide leg forward bend. So make sure that the feet are on the mat and turn the heels out and the toes in. So to come up onto the fingertips. You want to have your hands as close as you think you can get to shoulder distance apart. I'm going to bend the elbows, bring the palms to the floor, and see if we can squeeze the elbows together a little bit as we let the body hang over the hips. You want to adjust the weight in the feet so you're not in the toes or the heels completely, there's somewhere balanced between. And press the feet down and press the hips up so you push away from the floor. Remember, the hands are shoulder distance apart. You're trying to squeeze your elbows gently together. So we're looking to get at least a sense of those forearms being parallel to each other. And we want to try and keep the shoulders away from the ears a little bit. So we kind of lift those towards the sky. Make a bit of space. Lift that way back up, the halfway point. And we'll turn the heels in once, then the toes in once, and then the heels in once again. This is not an exact science, so let yourself have a little wriggle until it feels like your feet are underneath your knees and your bottom is down as low as your knees are high from the floor. You don't need to come down any lower than that. We're going to get down quite low. We'll bring the hands onto the thighs and let ourselves lift up. Again, you can have a little rock around, get yourself into a nice place. The shoulders relax, and gradually you're starting to tuck the tailbone down to the floor and lifting the body more into a vertical position. We'll take the arms out wide, a little bend in the elbows, arms face up towards the sky. And on the exhale, we're going to take a side bend towards the front of the mat. Just see if we can lay that elbow on the ground and open the chest up to the long side of the mat. Then we'll come back into the center of the body. We go out to the opposite side. Let that forearm down. Keep opening the groins, dropping the bottom down. Lengthen inside out to the back of the mat. One more breath. Come back into the center. Now bring your hands back onto the thighs. Allow yourself to hinge forwards. Bring your hands to the floor. Wiggle those feet out again. To that wide position with the toes in and the heels out. You take a little breath. It's time to turn the palms so the fingers point underneath us and the thumbs out to the side. We're just going to slowly walk the hands underneath until we can press the palms onto the floor behind us. Pressing into the legs. As much lift as we can. Shoulders away from the ears, and nice and wide. Breath. Hands forwards a little. I'm going to turn the heels in again. Walk the fingers towards the back of the mat. And we are going to pivot on this foot that's out towards the side. Sit back onto this heel. So we come into a little bit of a squat here on one leg. And just wriggle the toes underneath and make sure that you're actually sitting on your heel. If you're able to sit down completely onto your heel, then lengthen out through the long leg, flex the toes towards the sky. As you sit up tall, find something to focus on and see if you can bring your hands in towards your heart. Bring the hands to the floor. Travel to the other end of the mat, keeping low. And pivot again, toes and the heels. Take a little time to flex the foot and lengthen out. Find a comfortable space under that foot. Find focus. See if you can bring the hands again. Sometimes we lose it. And sometimes we make it. Bring hands to the floor. Take a little breath. Hands behind. Lengthen the legs out. Use the block. And we'll just shuffle ourselves back onto the mat. Come into Shavasana. So easy there. Those thighs and groins and your buttocks are going to feel like they've done a lot of work. Indeed they have. You're going to lengthen the legs out to the corner edges of the mat gently, just sliding the heels out so keep the body flat and safe. Let the groins open as the toes point out. I'm going to take my right hand just below the belly button, left hand above, so I can feel the breath in one hand and the heart in the other. Let the shoulders relax down, so close the eyes and loosen the jaw. Breathe a little deeper. Start to wriggle your fingers and toes. Wrists and the ankles to gently move around, so carefully bringing your body back and connect the nervous system and your body. When you're ready, allow yourself to take a gentle stretch out. The weight feels good to you this evening. When you're ready, we'll slide the heels along the floor. And ease the knees one leg at a time towards the body, the softest of hugs. Finally, we're all onto the right side. Knees in, turn the chest down towards the floor. Press into the hands. Smoothly lift yourself back up to sit. Into a posture that's easy for you to sit in. Some props if you need. Sit up tall. Bring the hands towards the heart. Close your eyes and take a longer breath in. Slow exhalation begins with a chin drop first. Feel the belly draw to the spine, and then we follow that into a simple bow to ceiling practice. The breath comes back into the body, we'll let it build the spine for us. And lifting the head, we open the eyes. Namaste. I hope you enjoyed this evening. Chance to work strongly, but also to align all our chakras. I will see you on the mat again soon.